Hey gang, this is John Casale with Triple Crown Baseball, and we're here with a special guest, a scout that's been working our program with the TC Top Prospects, Dave Holliday. So I want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us, Dave.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the time to talk to these young men about the game.
Well, awesome. Well, it's been a special privilege of mine to have had the opportunity to meet individuals like yourself throughout the course of the summer, and a wealth of baseball experience and knowledge. And so I'll start with tell us a little bit about Dave Holliday, how you got started in the game of baseball, and what's transpired to where you are today.
Well, growing up back east in the Pittsburgh area, actually a smaller town outside, I really kind of just grew up in it. I mean, I had no other reasons other than I had older kids in my neighborhood and cousins within 4 or 5 doors from each other. And we just got out in the back alley and played wiffle ball all day long until the street lights came on. And having a father who was very uh, strong into baseball, had played quite a bit and had an opportunity to sign with the Yankees, but had to go off to war and came back and never got to play again. But my dad worked 10, 12 hours a day, come home and turn his little radio on to pick up the Yankees out of Schenectady, New York. You could barely hear it, except for when the Yankees did something wrong and you'd hear a cuss word about Ralph Houck. but just talking the game, watching the game, playing the game. And, we didn't have any other distractions. Those were our toys, a ball, a glove, and a bat. We made up other stuff. We had to draw bases on the ground with chalk or whatever. But just sports in general, having an older brother and following him around, and which I think is very normal uh, for young men that have older siblings. They want to do what they do. So that led into high school and then led into college, and fortunately my brother had an opportunity to sign professionally, and I did not. And right after I graduated from college, I went right into coaching. And I felt like I had a pretty good set of coaches that I played for, that I learned a lot from, that I had a basic background. But going through coaching, every day is a different day. Every player is a different player. Finding the keys to the car to each player is difficult. You're trying to communicate things that they can relate to, and I think that's just a big part of teaching. And of course, being the second assistant at Oklahoma State, where I did my coaching, I was the guy that was expendable to go on the road and recruit. So that led me into evaluating, and I was pretty good at it, and learning how to do things on a comparison basis. Is this guy as good as the guy that we have backing up the other guy? And can he be our next starter or not? Deciding whether you want to recruit this player. And I think that's something that the kids need to understand about the college recruiting process, is that, I always tell them, go where you got an opportunity to get better and play. Two, like the people you're going to go play for, because you see them every day. And three, does the school provide the education that you're looking for? And, it's those three things. Well, I went through all three phases of it. I went to University of Miami out of high school. I went down there as a catcher, but I played shortstop growing up because my brother was the catcher. So when he got done, graduated high school, I went behind the plate. So we both went there to Miami as catchers. Well, I'm taking ground balls one day at Miami in the fall, and the head coach, Ron Frazier, says, "You can play the infield." I said, "Yeah, I have all my life." He goes, "Well, I want you to stay out here." But the other guy at shortstop was a sophomore, and he was a freshman All-American. So I wasn't going to play much. And coming out of the snow, I needed to go play. So that's when I decided to transfer and go to junior college out at Yavapai in Arizona, and had a great experience. And I think junior college is a wonderful place for kids to develop. One, you're in a similar age group. Two, playing opportunity. And you can't get better at this game without playing it. And then realizing that I had other opportunities to go back to D1 schools, but I went to Grand Canyon College, which was an NAIA school filled with guys like me that had been somewhere else and came back. And we, hotbed weather, great schedule, D1 schedule. I'm just looking for a good baseball situation. And, graduating in 4 years was important. And after that, not getting a chance to play professionally, went into coaching. That's kind of where it all led to.
That's a great story. Some good tidbits there. So from coaching, then you have the coaching lead into scouting and then professionally.
Well, I loved coaching. My situation going into scouting, and I'd had several scouts that I'd met out on the road say, "Hey, you ought to go into scouting," which I was about 28 or 29 years old at that time. And I said, "Yeah, I like coaching." But then the NCAA came down with the rule that you could only have a head coach in the minor sports, a head coach and one paid assistant. The third coach was what they called restricted earnings. Well, by that time I had had a wife and a kid, and I couldn't take a restricted earnings deal. So then I sat and made a phone call and decided that I'm going to go into scouting. The first question was asked, "Will you relocate? Will you move?" I said, "Yeah, it depends. I don't want to move north." And he says, "How about Florida?" And I said, "Sure." So going scouting my first year in scouting in 1990, I had the state of Florida, which I had pretty good players coming out at that time, Chipper Jones and Alex Fernandez, Carl Everett. And, there were several guys that were big league players. So I got in there and, I was looking for major leaguers. And by the sixth round, my list was gone. So I didn't expand my scouting. I was a little bit too tough. And again, you begin to realize you got to give other guys chances. You never know what they're going to do if they go into professional baseball. But so on from that first year, it led into doing an area and then eventually doing the Midwest cross checker and then doing the national cross checking. And then eventually leading into doing major league coverage. So that 31 years later, here I am speaking with you.
So was it, hey, it was time? Is that what led you to the end of the road?
No, I'm still not done. I don't think. COVID kind of wiped us out.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Major League Baseball lost $3 billion or something like that. And they basically, Atlanta, wiped out our whole pro department.
Huh.
We had 2 or 3 guys that were capable of retiring, and they kept 3, of which now they only have 1 of those 3. And they just, it's the way it's always been. You pick the low fruit.
Understood.
To save money.
Well, we feel fortunate to have you as part of this program. So thanks again. Obviously you got a call from Don Reynolds, who's putting this program together and partnering with us. So when you did get the call and he visited with you, did you come away with any expectations, or what were your thoughts going into it to start?
Well, Rene Gallo was the first one that contacted me. And actually, I started Rene out in scouting. He was my part-time guy in Texas when I had the territory. And talk about passion for scouting and passion for the game. Rene and I would stay up 2-3 hours, till 2-3 in the morning talking baseball. But he said, get a hold of Donnie. So I called Donnie, and I knew Donnie from coaching up in Cape Cod when Donnie was coaching at Orleans. And I said, hey, what do you got going? And we talked. And of course, what would have been a 20-minute phone call turned into about an hour, just talking baseball, talking scouting, talking kids, how to develop them, things like that. And I said, hey, I'm in. I still have a love to go watch kids play and try to understand what they're doing. And I haven't seen a 14-year-old in a long time, but it didn't take very long, a day or so, and I got in tune with, hey, you got to remember they're 14, but you're still looking for those skills. And how far away are they? None of them are ready-made players, but do they do certain things on the field that are going to allow them to keep moving forward?
Well, good. It's interesting. Everybody that started this had to do a little adjustment, figuring out, hey, remembering that they are 14. So, but so far you've been through all the events. We have this event coming up this upcoming weekend, and the common talk that we have every event and when we start is like, everybody's always talking about, spin rate, exit velocity, and all these the data collection, the tool measuring all these different items. And that's kind of the way that people are interpreting the game, more so now than however many years ago. But what went with that being a focus now so much, what are the things that that you look for from a standpoint of when you're evaluating a player?
Well, spin rate, exit velocity, those things were always somewhat measured by the naked eye. You saw a guy when he hit a ball in the gap, you could tell whether he got all of it or not just by the carry on the ball. And obviously, velocity and spin rate, you could tell when a guy threw a four-seamer that had a little late hop. And you still, you can't just say the velocity did it or the grip or whatever. It's a lot of things go into what happens for exit velocity. It's like the synchronization of the guy's arm, the extension, the strength of his hands, and things like that allow you to impart that type of spin. You have to take those things into consideration. They don't have a metric for that. So there's more behind the metric, behind the analytics than just the analytics. That's a result of, we have to figure out how he did it and why he did it, and can he repeat and do it again? And that's the one thing that I think analytics. I'm watching a game yesterday, the Yankees and the Mets, and they're spitting out a ground ball exit velocity of 108. That's why the ball got through. Yeah, look at the guy that hit it. It was Sano. He's an animal. Judge hits a home run to right field to tie the game. Yeah, Judge and Stanton are always going to have the highest exit velocities. Those guys are physically human, strong people. And what I'm more interested in is how does Betts do it, and how does Altuve do it, and how does Ronald Torreyes hit a home run? He's a jockey. But that's the kind of thing that scouting and seeing these young kids do it is, when I see a young kid who has good timing on his swing and he arrives at the ball at the right time, and a pitcher who has, a good delivery and arm action, and he has balance and coordination and how his arm works. I mean, hey, they're 14. They're going to get stronger. It's funny. I hate to go off script here, but I remember when, this was back several years ago in the city of Houston, there was a left-hander named Chris George and another right-hander named Matt Belisle, and they were matching up. and Belial's the 6'4", 210 right-handed high school pitcher that throws hard. And the other guy is about 6 foot left-hander, probably 165 pounds. Well, Chris George outpitched Matt Belial that day. And in the draft room, they're going, well, he's not very physical. No, but you're going to say Matt Belial is not going to get stronger and bigger? Why won't Chris George get bigger and stronger? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about skill versus maturity at the same time in high school. Which one down the road is going to match up? Well, they both ended up pitching in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. And, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you have to project, a kid's frame, a kid's strength. But if he's athletic and he's coordinated and he does things right, there's a strong chance that it will all get better.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, with all the new technology, what are the ways that you've seen the game change, over the years? And what with this technology, what are there things that are actually just missed because everybody's so focused on the numbers?
I think if you use the metrics, with the velocity and all those things, if you use them as a teaching tool more so than as a evaluation part of it, then I think it's very good. I mean, I think I didn't have video coming through college. I would have liked to have seen myself. And I know working with players, it's difficult to get them to feel something that I see by changing a movement in their swing or their delivery, and that, it's kind of like you don't think in pictures enough for them to understand, how do I make this adjustment? And like I've told them, I said, hey, it takes 30 days to change one movement in a swing or delivery for it to become natural to you. So don't get frustrated by it. And I think that's what young kids fight. If they don't have instant success with something, then they put it away and they go right back to what they were doing, instead of giving things a chance.
So you say 30 days to change. Can you equate that to swings? How many swings? What would you say? What's the number of swings before you can make that adjustment?
I don't know that it's a number of swings. It's maybe days in a row.
Okay.
I'll tell the kids that I work with, I said, hey, you don't have to have somebody throwing to you. You don't have to have a ball to hit into a net. You can take a bat and go out on the back patio and swing the bat 50 to 100 times and just try to get it to feel right. I said, growing up, we had a lilac bush on the end of the patio, listening to the ball games late at night. And I would take a bat and just pick a leaf out and say, okay, hit that leaf. Now hit this leaf. Play the game in your mind to where you start working on stuff and say, okay, what did I do there? How'd that feel? And it's a difficult process,
For sure, especially because everybody's so used to wanting to see the contact and see the ball off the barrel of the bat, and how far does it go? And again, it's hey, how hard did I hit it? What was my exit velo?
Right.
To just stand in the backyard and swing the bat. How boring is that, right?
Well, yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Well, what was I going to say? In order to make an adjustment, and that's what this game is all about, is learning an adjustment. I mean, everybody wants to hit a home run, and everybody wants to hit the ball hard. And I think what's happening is swings have become bigger and less controlled. And therefore, we have more strikeouts, less walks, because nobody understands that the ball is going to come into the strike zone. I have to be in a position to time it up. So in most cases, and I've emphasized this with the players that I deal with, your body supports your swing. Your body is not the swing. In other words, your hands and the bat and your eyes do the hitting. If you do big movements with your body, then you're going to reduce your chance of having good timing. And I try to emphasize, be a good hitter first. Power will come. And like I tell them, I said, take a look at the back of the card of Willie Mays or Hank Aaron. How many home runs did they hit their first couple of years in the major leagues? And then all of a sudden they take off. How does that happen? Well, they begin to understand the game. They begin to understand, what pitches can they really let their A swing happen, and then it's a matter of confidence. It's a confident baseball pitching and hitting are a confidence situation.
Yeah, so true. The we were talking just briefly there about the technology standpoint, and this was something that when you came to work our events, and we talked about the social media aspect of the involvement of social media in the game today, and so from a standpoint of it was fairly new to you when I got you involved with it. You I won't say fought it, but you you definitely were like, really? So what's your take? Obviously, you got sucked in and to at least having to become more knowledgeable about it now. So what's your take from a scouting standpoint, or did you have one even before doing this, working with us? And then how do you feel from the standpoint with the player parent involvement from the social media standpoint?
Well, I've always kind of been a little more of a private person, keeping my business to myself. And I don't have Facebook. I have Instagram on my phone, but I don't ever use it. I tweet never, but I will read a tweet, see what somebody else is saying, maybe occasionally respond back. It is what it is. It's out there today. That's what it is. And I think there's a lot of good information out there. And I'll even look at it just to see YouTube and stuff, to see what other people are doing and teaching, to see if I'm on track with what I believe they need to be doing. Some of it's good, some of it's repetitive. But maybe to a 12-year-old, it's first time they'd ever heard stuff. I'd like them to understand that. But also the internet can be you got to be careful what you let out there, especially with young players who aspire to go to college or go on into professional baseball. And it's always subject to the interpretation of who saw it. Sure. And if it didn't fit their values or their principles, they may write that player off. And that's one thing that I've always told guys: be careful what you put on the internet, because somebody's going to see it. It's forever. It's always going to be there. And but I think it's good for these young kids. Some kids up in some small town, he has a desire to go play in a nice school, but they don't come to his town very often. They don't know who he is. Mm-hmm. And to be able to put together a video of his workout or hitting or pitching or fielding or whatever, that's good. It gives schools a chance to look at it, maybe get interested. I remember in coaching, of course, we were pen and paper and send out a questionnaire and get a questionnaire back. And, how fast do you run to 60? What's your velocity? What's your batting average and this and that. And I would, the head coach would drop them on my desk, and I'd take them and I'd say, there's a whole lot of those guys sitting in this bin over here. Let me go through them first and maybe check them out with some pro scouts or some coaches in the area. to find out, if the stuff is legitimate. But yeah, I mean, it's out there. I mean, we get a lot of ideas. Uh, I know my wife gets a lot of ideas from the internet. She can't wait for me to leave the house for a few days so she can rearrange the furniture.
Gotcha. What was there ever a message from when you were scouting professionally or working with your scouts? Was there anything professionally that message giving from the teams, from ownership, from management with regards to social media for you guys as scouts?
There was never a mandate as to how to use the internet, but the information would enter the draft room.
Hmm.
If somebody had knowledge of something that we all needed to know about a player, his makeup, his habits or whatever he does, and good and bad, not always bad. I mean, this kid gets up at 5:30 in the morning and works out and, goes to school and comes back and works out again. We're learning a lot about his work ethic, and that's important. A particular player that just went in this past draft in the high part of the first round was that player. I knew the guy that the facility that he worked out at, and he was there at 5:30 in the morning working out. Go play his game. I mean, the kid he was very serious about his profession already. And that's a big part of it is, young players learning how to conduct themselves as professionals or, college players and what's expected of them.
Well, I mentioned before we have the camp and the tournament coming up this weekend. We have 26 players that you guys as scouts selected are coming to Arizona, to Tucson, to go through the camp with you guys and then compete in the tournament. So what are you going to communicate to these guys? What's your message to these young ball players that are going to be joining us this weekend?
Well, I put my coaching hat on last night, started thinking about it. And what were things that were important to me, back in the day when I was everyday practice at college, is to make these guys understand that when you get on the field, it is important that you pay attention to detail. And from the minute you start playing catch, if you're a catcher, play catch like a catcher. If you're an infielder, throw the ball like an infielder. If you're an outfielder, work in your feet. Don't just, nonchalant things, do things fundamentally right. Because the minute you get in the heat of battle, you'll revert to your mechanics and your fundamentals. And if they're not there, that's what creates an error, a throwing error. And you look up and you go, why did I do that? How did I do that? And it was really interesting because I was watching the game yesterday. John Farrell, who I coached in college, his son was pitching for Minnesota. And now he's not a flamethrower. He's a pitcher. And just to watch him make pitches, I'm like, you know what? That's what it's about. I mean, he went through an inning or two innings of no hits, but he made pitches. He didn't throw 95, he threw 90. His slider wasn't 89 or 90, it was 82, 83. Located him right. He was skillful. And that's what you're trying to get these guys to understand. You before the play happens, you've already made the play. Mm-hmm. The mental part of the game. And that's what I don't know if they get enough of.
Yeah. The obviously with all these athletes, they have parents. What's any specific advice? Obviously, you're a parent with some kids yourself, as you mentioned, some athletes, and but what's your advice to parents now with any athlete, baseball, football? But what can you give them?
Be supportive. Be honest. Don't be afraid to show them the right way. I mean, in other words, I don't like alibis. John, I didn't do this, or coach told me to do that. No, 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 no. It's your responsibility. It's your game. It's your career. You know, what should you have done? I know when my son was 12 and 13 and 14 years old, we'd get in the car after the game and he wanted me to critique him. What did I do today? What I said, what do you think you did? You tell me what you did and what you didn't do. That's what's important. Give them the rope to find the passion, learn how to be self-evaluators. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have is players aren't good self-evaluators. Now, I'm not saying you beat yourself up. I stink. I can't do this. And I've heard that before. And I don't like that kind of talk, but let them grow up a little bit. Let them find their way a little bit. Keep their feet on the ground, keep them going in the right direction, be supportive, but make them aware that they have to own it. They have to be responsible.
Some accountability.
You didn't leave your glove at home on the counter. That should have been first thing you thought of.
Yeah, it's interesting where we find the gloves and the bats and but yeah. Obviously, as I mentioned, this has been a first year program for us, for Triple Crown, and something that we've really felt passionate about, and why we built the partnership with Don's group. And so from your experience so far with what you've seen, and it has been limited. You went to our one big event, the Summer Nationals, and you're coming here to Arizona. Compared to other organizations that are doing similar things, and just in general, the showcase market that's out there. Well, what do you think about what we're doing, and how is it different than what else is being offered out in the marketplace?
Well, I've tried to get a grasp on what other organizations are doing, and from what I understand, they basically pull the teams together to play in these tournaments, and then the program tries to identify and pull out the top players, and then they progress and come up with prospect showcases and stuff like that. But I think with us, we're sitting there and we're talking to the parents, and we're sharing information, what we think they need to do. I know when we were in South Carolina, one young man went on the mound and was pitching and having a little problem. And I introduced myself to the dad, and I said, listen, I just got one little tip for you. You can pass it on to your son. This is why he's struggling to throw strikes. It's a quick fix. It's an easy adjustment. Just make him aware of it. But I think, like I told you before, sharing the game, giving back to the game. I mean, that didn't cost me nothing to go tell that dad that. Hopefully it'll help that kid. They're not all going to be big leaguers, but let's provide them things that allow them to be successful at whatever level they play at. And I think that's where we're involved. And I think that's good. And we've got on our group of scouts, we've got guys that have been through it all. And many of the other ones have coached and, still dealing with young kids. And hey, we just want to allow them to be what they can be.
Great. Well, the last question I have for you, give us a little, for those that are not familiar with the name Holiday, and for some of us that are, give us a little bit of information about the Holiday tree, where it is as far as the baseball, because I live in Colorado, so Colorado Rockies, and Matt Holiday was a pretty impressive individual out here. But give us a little bit about the family tree from the standpoint the Holiday family and baseball.
Well, like I told you earlier, obviously my brother and I got our love of the game from our father, and him and his kids are a few years older than mine. But you know, being in coaching and a father asked me this the other day. How do these players get to be like that? And I said, Tom's two boys, Josh and Matt, after school would come directly to the field, and they would find a way to go hit in a cage with each other, and after practice, play catch with the players, and maybe get around a BP on the field if we didn't pull all the stuff off already. And Josh came first, and Josh, whether anybody remembers, was a two-time, three-time drafted player, signed after his senior year with the Toronto Blue Jays, and out of high school was offered pretty good money to go sign with Minnesota, but went to college. Of course, he was valedictorian of his class. So, and mama wanted school. So he went to college and was just a sponge for baseball. You're talking about sitting in a swimming pool, swinging the bat down through the water. It's dark outside. He's in the corner of the yard hitting into a net off a tee. Stuff like that. Just constantly wanting to know, is this right? Is this right? Matt, being the younger brother, followed suit. Same way. Matt wasn't as verbal as Josh was growing up, but Matt was also more physical. And Matt was also, he was a premier quarterback. He was second team parade All-American out of high school with scholarships to anywhere in the country. And lo and behold, we get in the draft room his senior year, and it was funny because I had seen a player that in Cincinnati who was going to be a first round draft, who Matt had played with the summer before on the USA team. And I'm watching him, and there's 60 people there watching him play. And I'm going, you know what? Matt's as good as this guy. So I called the scouting director and cross checker, the area guy and the Midwest cross checker. And I said, hey, we need to pay a little more attention to Matt. Well, wasn't he going to play football? I said, it's not stamped in, rubber stamp that he's playing football. I said, he likes baseball. And so we put Matt up on the board with the other 150 guys, top 150 guys. And yeah, you run them down in columns of 25, and Matt's like in the second column, and we pass him. 29 of the teams pass him. It's about the fifth round, about the fourth round. The GM asked the scouting director, who I'm sitting beside, do you want to take a shot at Matt? And I looked up and I said, we better go make a phone call. We don't want to waste a pick. So we called my brother and this and that. And yes, he still wants to play. And we ended up drafting Matt in the seventh round and signed him. And he went out and he played and, was doing very well and had some struggles. And then, there was also a change of general manager and this and that as Matt was in AA. And just to show you that the right word from the right person can escalate a guy's career. And Matt hit 269 in AA. His manager stood up in the meeting and said, that's the hardest 269 I've ever seen. So a year later, he's in AAA. He's there 2 weeks. Larry Walker gets hurt. Matt's in the big leagues and never left. But Now Matt has two young boys. One's a senior and one's a 14-year-old, both on the national recruiting trails. And of course, they're going to Oklahoma State, but uh, but they're the same way. They're in the cage all the time. They're down at the field. They think and drink baseball, and they have adjustments to make. They're not there yet, but they have a sound foundation, and both will be very good players. And Josh also has a young man, 12 years old, who's a pretty spiffy little infielder. And of course, my son, he also coached at Oklahoma State a little bit, and he's got a little boy and sending me pictures all the time with a ball in his hand and glove and all the kid. He's 1.5 and he's baseball. He sees a game on TV. So we're brainwashing him.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like baseball is going to be in the Holiday family for quite some time. So
yeah, it is. And it's I'll be on, my brother and I will call and we'll fix everything in baseball in an hour's conversation.
That's great. Just out of curiosity, who was the manager that stood up and made the comment about Matt's 269?
Marv Foley.
Okay. Gotcha.
Marv Foley was the manager, and Marcel Latchman, who was the special assistant to the GM, also said the same thing. And the guy that really rubber stamped Matt as a big leaguer was Frank Robinson. Matt was playing in the fall league in Arizona, and they were picking a USA team. And Frank Robinson saw him play and put him on the Olympic team. It wasn't the Olympic year, but they played down in Pan Am games or something. But
right.
that was the boost.
You got to be in the right place, right? Sometimes you got to be in the right place.
When you go scout a player, a lot of times you're watching a 5-game series. That's just a snapshot of what the guy does. That's where analytics comes involved. What's his track record? What's he done? How's he doing it? And then you're looking for those things. But the bottom line is sometimes you just have to watch the person, the effort and the energy and the work that they put into their game. What's their makeup, and like I said, the guys in the big leagues aren't always the most talented, but they're the best makeup guys.
Good point.
They'll fight you to win.
Yeah, and that's been a topic that a lot of the scouts have mentioned in the interview. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time. So, thank you again for doing this, and I look forward to seeing you here in a couple days.
Okay, well, I'm glad I got all this off my chest.